Hi, my name is Jackelyn Rockwood, and I'm an occupational therapist at Emerge Pediatric Therapy. I'm going to talk to you today about family mealtime strategies. Feeding is a really close area to my heart because I grew up as an incredibly picky eater. I was the child that ate nothing but chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese when I was 5 years old, and I'm happy to report that I now eat a good variety of foods. So I'm here today to share some tips that may be helpful when you're setting up family meals at home. When getting your child ready for meals, it's important to provide a verbal warning so that they know to expect that the meal is going to be coming. For a lot of children with sensory processing difficulties, sometimes that verbal warning isn't enough and they need an additional cue to recognize that the meal is going to be happening. Visual timers or schedules can also be really beneficial in getting your child ready for meal times. If your child is a little bit more high energy before meals or has trouble settling down at the table, you can engage in some heavy work activities like pushing a stool over to the sink to wash their hands, helping to wipe off the table, or pushing the chairs over to the table to help them get a little bit more settled before transitioning to the meal. You can also use tools like a wiggle seat or even part of a beach ball partway blown up inside of a pillowcase to provide some of that extra sensory input at the table. It's really important that your child has a seat where they can have really great postural control to make sure that they're able to use all of the muscles in their mouths appropriately for chewing and eating. We really want to make sure that your child's feet are supported under their chair and that they're able to sit up nice and tall in their seat for meal times. You can use items like a stool, or if your child's in a high chair, moving that footrest if possible up to merely make sure their feet are supported. Even stacking up some old books can be really beneficial as long as you're there to make sure that the child is being safe. When engaging in meals at home, it's great to serve meals in a way that we call family style, where all of the foods are passed around the table so that the child has a chance to explore each of the foods and has an opportunity to have those foods on his or her plate. It's really important that the child has at least one food that they feel really safe or comfortable eating, one of their preferred foods, on the table at all times. If your child is feeling really nervous or anxious at the table, it can release adrenaline in your child's body, which will actually decrease their appetite and make them less likely to eat. So we really want to make sure that the child is feeling safe and comfortable, but also has a lot of opportunities to explore foods at the table. One strategy that's really helpful is putting a plate in the center of the table called the learning plate. So any foods that your child does not feel comfortable having within their own space, they can choose to put on the learning plate where you learn and explore that food as a family, but it's not directly in the child's space. Eating is a learned behavior, so it's really important that your child has a role model for eating, and especially for determining how to move the food around in their mouth. You can really, it may sound a little gross, but you can over-exaggerate how you are taking bites of the food and really, chewing with your mouth open, showing the child how you're moving that food around in your mouth, what your tongue is doing, whether you have to use your teeth to chew up the food or whether it slides down on its own. And this will really help your child to learn which muscles and which parts of their mouth they need to eat those different foods. It's really important to make sure that you are making the food the focus of the meal and not the child. When children have picky eating concerns or have difficulties with eating, it's easy to get in a habit of really focusing on wanting your child to eat and focusing on them because you're really concerned about their nutrition and their ability to get the amount of food they need to function during the day. But making the child the focus of the meal can really cause some stress and tension during those meal times. So try, if you can, to direct your focus to the food that you're eating and really make that mealtime fun. If you have a younger child, really focus on play-based strategies that your child is enjoying right now. If they really like cars or trucks, you can drive the food around on your plate, make different paths for it to go on. If they like different characters, you can incorporate those as well. Cookie cutters are great to use for meal times, making the food into different characters or shapes that might be more appealing to your child. Using tools like some of the really tiny spoons or rounded toothpicks that are safer for your child to help them connect different foods or make pictures on their plates can be really helpful. You can also make, if your child likes letters or numbers, you can make those in purees and use other foods as paintbrushes or drawing instruments at the table. For older children, you can really focus on the sensory properties of the food. So looking at what the food looks like on the outside versus the inside. You can take a look at whether the food makes a small or a large sound and make some guesses about what kind of sound it would make if our teeth crunched it. Taking a look at if the food has a big or a small smell. Looking at all the different ways that we can feel the food. Is it bumpy or smooth? Is it squishy or hard? Are there different parts of the food that feel differently or look differently? And then work your way up to getting that food closer to your child's face if they feel comfortable that way. So you can do things like making a silly mustache with food, or having it crawl up and making silly eyebrows, making funny teeth with your food. Really try to enjoy that experience, and that's going to help your child relax and engage with that food as well. And then work on your child progressing up to actually being able to take a bite of that food. And it's really important, if it's a new or non-preferred food, that your child feels comfortable and safe to try that food and feels comfortable being able to remove it from their mouth if it's not something that feels safe to them. So you can have additional plate, cup, bowl to the side, or even just a towel or napkin for your child to spit out that food if they're not feeling safe or comfortable to fully eat it. And really, provide reinforcement and encouragement if they're even willing to taste or try that food. And then if your child is willing to take some bites of the food, you can work on taking different size bites as well. Again, back with that modeling, parents and siblings can provide really great models for appropriate bite size. And you can also grade that bite size to where your child feels comfortable. If they're really unsure about the food, you could do a snake taste with your child's tongue, or take a really tiny bunny bite and work on progressing up to larger bites depending on what kinds of animals they're interested in at that time. Another strategy that is really helpful is waiting until 5 or 10 minutes into the meal to give your child a drink. A lot of times with picky eaters, kids will fill up on drinks or liquids because it gives them that feeling of fullness, but they're getting all of their calories from that liquid and not from the meal because they're trying to avoid what's on their plate. So really make sure that your child is having an opportunity to explore that food first, and then you can introduce that drink after they've had some opportunities with the food. And then if your child is feeling uncomfortable with foods on their plate, that first step with eating is really being able to tolerate new or non-preferred foods in your space and on the table. It's important to teach your child to move the food away from themselves rather than removing their body from the table. A lot of kids, if they're not feeling comfortable with the food, their first instinct is to try to get away from the table or move away to another activity and get away from that task that's at hand that's making them feel uncomfortable. So as we mentioned earlier, you can move that food onto the learning plate in the middle of the plate or in the middle of the table. If they're feeling just a little bit uncomfortable, you can have the child move the food from their plate onto the placemat or a little bit further away, or even just work on pushing their plate itself further into the table so the child is able to stay at the table and engage with the rest of the family during meal times. It's really important for your child to be able to eat with other people. I know schedule constraints can be really difficult, but if you are able to have at least one parent or a sibling there to eat with the child so they can again have those models and have that full eating experience can be really beneficial. After about 25 to 30 minutes at the table, you can start your child on a cleanup routine. A really fun tip from the sequential oral sensory, or the SOS approach to feeding, is to turn the food into rockets. So to really get your child engaged with some of those foods that they may not have tasted during mealtime. The child can place one piece of each food that's left on the plate in between their lips and actually blow the food into the trash can or into a container nearby. So that way that child is still getting that sensory experience of bringing the food up to their mouths and then releasing it into the trash can to send it away. A lot of times kids will be more willing to engage with the food closer to their mouths if they know it's going away soon and they're not going to be expected to eat it more. If your child is not feeling comfortable bringing the food up to their mouths, they can still participate in moving the food off of their plates, either into a trash can, or into Tupperware containers if you're saving the food for leftovers, and then assist with rinsing off and washing their plates as well. Overall, it's really important that your child is involved in the mealtime. You are welcome to have your child help you pick out foods at the grocery store to really make them feel a part of the experience. Have your child help you cook materials in the kitchen, definitely grading it to the age level that they're at, but they can help with stirring things, mixing things together, setting up the table. The more the child is involved in the mealtime experience, the more likely they will be willing to try that food, engage with those foods during meal times. If you have concerns about your child's eating, our team at Emerge is more than happy to help. Most of the tips we talked about today are from the Sequential Oral Sensory Approach to Feeding by Dr. Kay Toomey. If you have more questions about this approach, you can visit their website or our website at Emerge Pediatric Therapy to get some more information. Thank you and have a wonderful day.